take a moment to notice your breath. Slowly inhale and exhale. Now gently close your eyes if you like, or simply soften your gaze. You're here, not just in a room, not just in a body, but in a moment, asking something strange, something simple, something profound. Who am I? And who are we? These questions have followed us through centuries of thought, religion, science, and soul-searching. They arrive quietly, sometimes in childhood, sometimes after heartbreak, sometimes while staring at the ceiling in the dark. What makes me me? Why do I feel so deeply? And when I love someone, what part of me is doing the loving? At first glance, it feels obvious. You are you. I am I. We are different. We are separate. But look closer, and the lines begin to blur. Is your you the name you were given at birth? The face you see in the mirror? The stream of thoughts flickering behind your eyes? Or are you the sum of your memories, your choices, your beliefs? For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with the idea of the self. René Descartes, in the 1600s, famously declared, "Cogito, ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. It was his way of grounding identity in thought itself. If he could doubt everything else, he reasoned, the fact that he was doubting proved his existence. He was a thinker, and so he must exist. But what exactly is that thinker? As time moved forward, other philosophers took the question deeper. Søren Kierkegaard asked about the self in a more spiritual way, viewing it as a kind of relationship with itself, an unfolding between the finite and infinite, the temporal and the eternal. Jean-Paul Sartre saw identity as something we create moment by moment through our actions and choices. There was no fixed self, he said, only freedom, responsibility, and the way to becoming. And now, science joins the conversation. Neuroscience tells us something strange, something almost disorienting. It suggests that in the brain, there is no single control center, no little glowing orb labeled self. Instead, identity seems to emerge from patterns, shifting, distributed networks of impulses, feedback loops, and memories stored in various regions of the brain. In other words, you may not be one thing at all, but a kind of symphony, a narrative stitched together from biological, emotional, and social threads. There's no tiny captain behind the eyes, just a process, a pattern, a presence that feels like you. And yet, despite this complexity, we still speak with such certainty. We say things like, I love you, I feel this, I believe that, I don't trust him, I know myself. But pause and consider, who is speaking? Who is the I? Your brain is not the same today as it was 5 years ago. The cells have been replaced. Your memories have shifted, some blurred, some revised. Your beliefs may have deepened or completely changed. You're not who you were. And yet, you carry a thread of sameness, a sense of selfhood that somehow persists. What is that thread? Some say it is the soul. Others say it is memory. Still others say it is the illusion of continuity, a story our brain keeps telling to make sense of our lives. So now take another breath, slowly in and slowly out. This might feel strange, even unsettling, but it's okay to sit with the mystery. You don't need to solve it tonight. Just let the questions flow through you like water. Who am I? Maybe I am a body shaped by genetics, by biology, by time, a nervous system that feels heat and cold, hunger and pleasure, a heart that beats in rhythm with emotion, a brain bathed in chemicals that determine how I see the world. Maybe I am a mind, a thinker, a meaning maker, an observer watching thoughts come and go, like clouds across a sky. Or maybe I am a soul, something unseen, a spark breathed into existence, a sliver of the divine, a being designed for relationship, for purpose, for love. In Christian thought, the soul is central. It is the part of us that can connect to God, the part that lives beyond the body. It is eternal, unshakable, made in the image of something greater. And in that view, we are not just individuals. We are part of a body, a family, a community, one body, many members, bound together in sacred interdependence. But here's the twist. No matter how we define the self, body, mind, soul, we can't define it in isolation, because we only ever come to know ourselves in relationship to others. The moment we are born, we begin attaching. We seek out faces, voices, warmth. We cry for comfort. We reach for connection. From the very beginning, the I is built in the presence of you, and from you emerges we. So, who are we? We are a species wired for relationship. Even our biology tells the story. Mirror neurons in the brain allow us to feel what others feel. Oxytocin floods our systems when we bond, trust, or touch. The vagus nerve connects our heart to our face and voice, allowing us to co-regulate our emotions with those around us. We are not islands. We are networks of resonance. When you love someone, you don't just give them your time or your attention. You give them a part of your nervous system. You allow their emotional state to affect yours. You form a loop, a shared emotional circuitry. And this is where the mystery deepens. If we are shaped by the ones we love, if our identity is softened and carved by relationships, then are we ever truly separate? Think of someone who once mattered deeply to you. A friend, a partner, a parent. Even if they're no longer present in your life, their voice might still echo in your mind. Their influence might still shape your choices, your fears, your longings. Are they gone? Or are they now a part of you? And when you say, I love you, what are you offering? Are you offering stability? A safe place for another soul to land? Are you offering history? Your unique story? Your memory? Your context? Or are you offering a moment? A shared breath? A wordless understanding? A presence? Perhaps love is less about merging with another and more about making room. Room for another identity to exist beside your own, without fear, without pretense, without control. And yet, we often do merge. We blend. We absorb traits, phrases, habits. We begin to mirror each other. Two selves, moving in tandem, sometimes losing definition, sometimes finding it. So now, let's return to the question. Who am I? I might be a constellation of experiences. I might be a spirit encased in flesh. I might be a story still unfolding. And who are we? We might be fellow travelers, walking each other home, reminding each other who we are when we forget. We might be reflections of something higher, echoes of the same original voice. Or we might simply be organisms that find comfort in togetherness, wired by evolution to seek touch, to share food, to sing in harmony. Whichever answer resonates with you, know this. The question matters. Sitting with it softens us. It makes us gentler, more curious, more open. In a world rushing toward answers, being the one who asks is a quiet act of resistance. So now breathe. Let your breath be an anchor in this sea of thought. You don't need to arrive at a conclusion. There is power in wondering, in not knowing, in resting gently in the space between. Who am I? Who are we? Perhaps we are questions wrapped in skin. Perhaps we are memories walking. Perhaps we are not things, but processes, emerging, evolving, dissolving, becoming. And perhaps, just perhaps, we are love, learning what it means to become visible. As we close this chapter, hold this idea softly in your mind. If you are a story, then love is the pen, and every person you meet leaves a line. Let's go deeper now, into the spaces where those lines cross, where bonds form, and where souls begin to tie themselves to one another. We'll explore this next, in the mystery of soul bonding. So take another breath, let the question linger, and drift softly into the next chapter when you're ready. Close your eyes again. If they fluttered open, let the body settle. Let your breath find you. We've just wandered through the swirling question of identity. Who am I? Who are we? Now let's walk a little deeper into the forest of human connection, where the lines between you and me begin to blur, where souls meet, sometimes only for a moment, and sometimes for what feels like eternity. We begin with a concept older than language, and yet still wrapped in mystery. Soul bonding. Throughout time and across cultures, there have been whispers of something deeper than affection, more permanent than touch, an unseen tether, a spiritual thread. It weaves itself between people, sometimes delicately, sometimes with force. Some call it a soul tie. Others describe it as a bond. But whatever name it takes, the feeling is the same. A sense that this person has changed something in you, and you may never quite return to who you were before. In ancient Hebrew thought, the soul was called nephesh, not just the spirit, but the breath, the life force, the essence of being. To bind souls together then was not poetic metaphor, it was spiritual architecture. In the Christian tradition, soul ties are understood as deep emotional and spiritual bonds formed through intimacy, both physical and emotional, or through deeply significant events. The Apostle Paul, in the New Testament, alludes to this when he writes that whoever unites with another becomes one flesh. It's not just about union, it's about transformation. Two lives becoming, in some strange way, entangled. But what happens when we bring this ancient idea into modern light? Psychology, in its own vocabulary, describes a similar phenomenon. When two people experience intense closeness, whether through love, sex, vulnerability, or even shared trauma, the brain lays down powerful neurological and emotional pathways. It creates what researchers might call attachment maps or bonding mechanisms. And once those are in place, we start organizing our behavior, even our sense of self, around that other person. In trauma bonding, for instance, a victim may feel psychologically attached to their abuser, not out of affection, but out of a confused, survival-rooted bond that forms in chaotic emotional climates. This can feel hauntingly similar to love. It's sticky, it's intense, it's hard to explain, and it's often very difficult to break. Even without trauma, bonding occurs. In fact, the biological mechanisms of love and connection are astonishingly clear. During moments of emotional or physical intimacy, our brains release oxytocin, often referred to as the hormone. Love, onaniyasiasas. Oxytocin promotes trust, closeness, and a desire to remain bonded. It's what helps mothers bond to their babies after birth. It's what softens us during vulnerability. And it's what floods us when we feel deeply seen by someone. This chemical bath is not symbolic. It's real. It's molecular. And it's part of why soul ties feel so unshakable. The body remembers, even when the mind tries to forget. But what is this feeling really? This sense that someone else lives inside you. Maybe it's the echo of shared moments. Laughter at 2 a.m., Words whispered in dim rooms, hands held in silence. Maybe it's the shadow they leave in your dreams, the way your thoughts still loop in their rhythm, the way certain songs still feel like conversations. Or maybe it's something deeper. There are those who believe that a soul tie is not merely emotional or hormonal, but spiritual, something that happens beyond our control, beyond our awareness. The idea here is that when we deeply connect with someone, our souls don't just touch, they tether. And that tether can remain long after the person is gone. This is where the concept takes a strange and haunting turn. Because if soul bonds exist, the question becomes, can they ever be broken? Can we truly sever a soul tie? Or do pieces of others remain embedded within us, shaping our fears, our preferences, our patterns? You may have experienced this in your own life. Perhaps you've moved on from a relationship. Time has passed. You've changed your routines, met new people. And yet, on certain nights, unprovoked and uninvited, their presence returns. Not physically, but internally. You remember how they used to speak to you. You hear their laugh in a stranger's voice, or you react to someone new in a way that doesn't quite belong to them, but to someone before them. This is the mark of a soul bond. It is memory, made emotional. It is longing, wired into biology. It is love, or something like it, taking up residence inside your nervous system. And sometimes it's not beautiful. Sometimes it hurts. Not all soul ties are healthy. Some leave wounds rather than warmth. Some make us feel small, confused, ashamed. And yet, we hold on to them because the bond, however painful, feels sacred, like a thread we don't know how to untangle. There's a strange comfort in this pain, a ritual familiarity, and that too is part of the bond. Some theologians suggest that unhealthy soul ties can entangle us spiritually, that they create dependency, distraction, or distortion in our ability to love others, or even ourselves. They say these bonds need to be prayed through, released, or healed in the presence of God. From a secular view, this might be described as closure, emotional detachment, therapeutic separation. Whatever lens you use, the result is the same. Soul ties demand healing when they are no longer life-giving. But here's the quiet truth. Few people say out loud, even the most painful bonds can contain beauty. Even the most complicated connections can contain pieces of light. That's the paradox of soul bonding. It doesn't always follow reason. It's not neat. It's not clean. It's not always mutual. Sometimes you are tied to someone who is not tied to you. Sometimes the thread is invisible to them, but unmistakable to you. And still, it lives on. So what does this mean for us? In practice, how do we navigate a world of invisible threads, where every connection carries the potential to change us? We begin by noticing, by honoring the ways people live inside us, not just romantically, but in all kinds of relationships. A childhood friend who taught us loyalty, a teacher who believed in us when no one else did, a grandparent who held our hand during stormy nights. These too are soul ties. They are living tapestries of memory and meaning, each one contributing a thread to who we are. And then we discern. Not all bonds are meant to remain. Some need loosening. Some need release. Some need forgiveness. And this too is a sacred act. Letting go is not an unloving thing. Sometimes it's the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and for the other. So pause now. Breathe deeply. Think of someone who lives inside you, not just in memory, but in emotion. Feel their presence gently. Notice the space they occupy. Is it light or heavy? Does it expand you or limit you? There's no need to fix it tonight. Simply notice. You may choose in time to hold them differently, to move them from the center of your heart to the back row of your soul's theater. Still present, still meaningful, but no longer directing the show. Soul bonding in the end is not just about connection, it's about transformation. Every person we bond with alters the map of our internal world, and sometimes the greatest growth comes not from forming new ties, but from understanding the ones we already carry. The final question then is this: are we a collection of soul ties? Are we patchworks of others' emotions, voices, energies? And if so, who might we be becoming through them? As we close this chapter, let your breath steady. Let your body soften. Let the invisible threads shimmer gently in your awareness. You are not alone in this. You are not strange for remembering, for feeling, for aching. To love deeply is to bond deeply, and to bond is to risk losing a piece of yourself. But maybe that's what it means to be human, to be willing to let others in, to allow ourselves to change, to believe even in pain that connection is worth it. Now slowly bring your attention to the next doorway. We've explored the soul and its mysterious ties. But what powers these bonds? What's happening in the circuitry of the brain and body when we attach to another? Let's step gently into the next space and discover the circuit of emotional attachment. But not too fast. Linger here if you need to. Breathe in, breathe out, and let the bonds you carry rest quietly, just for now. Take a breath, deep and slow. Let your body rest in place. Let your thoughts settle into stillness. You're here, and so are the echoes of every connection you've ever had. We carry people inside of us, sometimes without realizing it. We carry not only memories, but patterns, reactions, expectations, invisible scripts that tell us how to love, how to reach, how to retreat, and how to protect ourselves. But these patterns weren't written overnight. Long before we spoke our first full sentence, long before we understood the world as we do now, something inside of us was already learning, watching, reacting, adapting, and what it learned shaped everything. This is the circuit of emotional attachment. It isn't just a feeling. It isn't just romance or affection or the comfort of a hug. Attachment is biological. It's a neurological and psychological blueprint, etched into us by the earliest relationships we've known. It's how we learn to be in the presence of another human being, and how we learn to survive when they left. Imagine a baby in its first few months of life. It cannot feed itself. It cannot move toward warmth. It cannot protect itself from discomfort or pain. It is utterly dependent on its caregivers to regulate its emotions, its safety, its very existence. And in those early months, the brain is recording every signal, every gesture, every delay in response, every tone of voice, every experience of being held or not being held. Over time, the brain begins to form circuits, expectations about how the world will respond, about whether closeness is safe or dangerous, about whether crying will bring comfort or silence, about whether people are reliable or unpredictable. These expectations, though formed in infancy, become templates for future relationships. They become what we now call attachment styles. There are four main styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Each one is a survival strategy. Each one is a way the brain learned to navigate the landscape of love and loss. If a child receives consistent, warm, attuned care, they're more likely to develop a secure attachment style. This doesn't mean their life is perfect, but it means they've internalized a basic belief: I am lovable. Others will come when I need them. I can trust. As adults, these people often form balanced, flexible relationships. They can give and receive love without being overwhelmed by fear. But what if the care is inconsistent? What if sometimes the parent is attentive and other times distracted, preoccupied, or emotionally unavailable? In this case, the child may become anxiously attached, constantly seeking closeness, but never feeling quite secure. As adults, they may fear abandonment, crave constant reassurance, and struggle with self-worth. They often love intensely, but with a thread of desperation woven through. Others may experience the opposite. If closeness led to rejection, punishment, or emotional overwhelm, the child might adapt by withdrawing. They learn that self-reliance is safer than reaching out. These individuals often develop an avoidant attachment style. They can appear independent, emotionally distant, or even disinterested in intimacy, not because they don't want connection, but because they've learned it comes at a cost. And then there are those who grew up in environments of chaos, abuse, or neglect, where caregivers were a source of both comfort and fear. In such cases, the brain doesn't know how to organize its expectations. It swings between craving closeness and fearing it. This is the disorganized attachment style, a survival strategy born from confusion. As adults, these individuals may experience intense, unstable relationships, often marked by deep longing and deep fear. None of these styles are chosen. None are conscious. They are scripts written into us before we could write our names. And so now pause. Breathe. Let that truth settle in. If your attachment style is your emotional fingerprint, then ask yourself, how much of you was chosen? And how much was simply inherited from your early experiences? You may find comfort in this, or grief, or resistance. All are valid. But know this: your attachment style is not your destiny. It's a map, but one that can be redrawn. Therapy, safe relationships, self-awareness. These are the tools of revision. The nervous system, while ancient and deeply patterned, is also beautifully plastic. It can change. It can learn new ways to love, to trust, to exist in connection. And yet, to change a map, we must first know the roads we've traveled. So ask yourself quietly, gently, what was love like when you first learned it? Was it warm and steady, or inconsistent and confusing? Were your needs met with tenderness, or met with silence, or anger, or absence? Did you feel safe when you cried, or did you learn not to cry at all? These early memories may not be clear. Some may be pre-verbal, but your body remembers. Your nervous system remembers. That tightness in your chest when someone pulls away. That rush of panic when a text goes unanswered. That instinct to retreat when someone gets too close. These are not personality flaws. They are the echoes of your first lessons in love. So breathe again. There is nothing wrong with you. Your attachment style is not a problem to be fixed. It is a story to be understood. And the story goes deeper still. Because attachment isn't just about childhood. It lives in the body across a lifetime. It determines how we connect with partners, friends, co-workers, even strangers. It shapes how we handle conflict, how we process loss, how we respond to intimacy. For example, someone with an anxious attachment style may interpret a partner's silence as rejection. Their brain, shaped by past inconsistency, leaps to panic. They may text repeatedly, feel overwhelming dread, or spiral into self-blame. Someone avoidant, by contrast, may feel smothered by too much closeness. They may pull away just when the relationship begins to deepen. It's not that they don't feel, they feel deeply. But the wiring tells them closeness is a threat, distance is safe. And those with disorganized attachment may feel trapped in a push-pull dynamic, wanting love desperately, but fearing the vulnerability it requires. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it gives context. It invites compassion for ourselves and for others. It reminds us that everyone is carrying old blueprints, that behind every wall is a wound. And that brings us to something essential: emotional regulation. One of the hidden functions of attachment is regulation. When we're close to someone, especially someone safe, our nervous system can settle. Heart rate slows, cortisol drops, muscles release. The body says, I am not alone, I am okay. This is called co-regulation, the calming that happens not through logic, but through presence. A warm voice, a gentle touch, a shared breath. It's one of the reasons why breakups feel so physically painful. We don't just lose the person, we lose the regulator, the person our nervous system used to calibrate itself. And yet, we can learn to regulate ourselves. We can build what psychologists call earned secure attachment, a sense of internal safety that wasn't given in childhood, but developed later through intentional healing. This process takes time, it takes self-compassion, and often it takes new experiences of safe connection, but it is possible, and it is profoundly freeing, because in understanding the circuitry of attachment, we begin to understand ourselves. We see that our longing is not weakness, it is wiring, that our fear is not failure, it is memory, that our reactions are not random, they are echoes, and most of all, we begin to understand that our attachment patterns are not who we are, they are who we became in response to what we needed. So now breathe again, let your nervous system feel seen, let the old patterns float gently to the surface. You are not broken, you are bonded, and every bond tells a story. So where does this story begin? How early is too early to be shaped by longing? How young are we when the script begins writing itself? These questions take us further back, into the earliest days of development, into the subtle world of infant needs, mirror neurons, and emotional resonance. They take us into a space where the self and the other are not yet separate, a place where we begin not as individuals, but as beings formed in the presence of others. That's where we're headed next. But for now, let this moment be enough. Let the knowledge settle into your bones. You are allowed to love. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to rewrite your emotional circuitry. And if no one told you this before, then let it begin here. You are safe. You are worthy. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are learning. And your wiring can change. Now take one more breath. Let yourself drift. Let the threads of attachment loosen just enough to feel light. And when you're ready, we'll journey into the beginnings of longing, in the earliest stage of life, into the mystery of how we are shaped before we even know we are alive. Let's go, gently. Take a moment. Let your body soften again. Allow your breath to come and go like waves against the shore. You're entering another threshold now, one that every person walks through, yet few fully understand. It is not just a phase. It is not just about physical growth or voice changes or acne. It is a complete transformation. Puberty, a word that often feels awkward, clinical, or heavy with memory. But beneath the discomfort of middle school hallways and first crushes lies something sacred, a biological rite of passage, one that rewires the brain, one that builds the emotional architecture we'll live inside for the rest of our lives. Puberty is when the self awakens to itself and to others. It's when the body begins to speak in a new language, a language written in hormones and heat and longing. But it is not chaos. It is design, and it's far more complex and beautiful than we were ever taught. Let's begin where all change begins, in the brain. The brain is not a static structure. It's not done when we're born. In fact, it begins a second wave of remodeling, right around the time of puberty. Synapses are pruned, pathways strengthened. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation, undergoes a years-long process of fine-tuning. This is why teenagers can feel things so deeply, act so impulsively, and yet show moments of surprising wisdom. The emotional brain, the limbic system, develops faster than the rational brain. This means feelings come in strong, before the systems for interpreting them are fully online. It's not immaturity, it's timing. The emotional system floods before the brakes are installed. Now add in the hormonal symphony. In boys, testosterone levels rise, sometimes by as much as 30 times their childhood baseline. Testosterone fuels muscle growth, voice deepening, and facial hair. But it also affects the brain. It increases competitiveness, territorial instincts, and can heighten the desire for status and exploration. It is also closely tied to dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. This pairing can drive a desire for novelty, for challenge, for stimulation, and sometimes for risk. In girls, estrogen and progesterone begin their cyclical dance, guiding the development of breasts, menstruation, and fertility. But something quieter also begins to flow. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin enhances sensitivity to emotional cues. It deepens the desire for closeness. It fosters empathy and nurturance. And when paired with estrogen, it creates a chemistry of connection, heightening emotional awareness, relational sensitivity, and even the ability to feel what others are feeling. Of course, these are broad patterns, not rigid rules. Every person experiences puberty uniquely. Some girls are more driven by risk. Some boys crave intimacy. We are not robotic outcomes of biology. But biology does write the first lines. And those lines matter because they set the tone for how we begin to seek love, for how we interpret attention, for how we form emotional blueprints in romantic and social relationships. Think of your own experience. Think of the first time you felt attraction, the first time you were seen by someone, not as a child, but as something new, the first time you blushed for reasons you didn't understand, the first time the word like became complicated. That was the beginning of emotional intimacy. Not intimacy in a physical sense, but in a vulnerable sense. Puberty opens the door to deeper emotional perception. Suddenly, we're not just aware of our needs, we're aware of others as well. Their faces, their signals, their approval or rejection. We begin to tune into social hierarchies, peer dynamics, romantic potential. Our brains are learning what matters most in this new terrain: connection. This is why rejection during adolescence can feel catastrophic. The adolescent brain interprets social rejection as physical pain because it literally activates the same neural pathways. A breakup at 16 may seem trivial to an adult, but to the teenager, it can feel like the world is ending. And in a way, a world is ending. The world of emotional safety they were just beginning to build. What's even more profound is how differently boys and girls may interpret these experiences, not because of culture alone, but because of underlying hormonal and neurological differences. Estrogen increases the brain's sensitivity to serotonin, a chemical that helps regulate mood. This may explain why girls tend to experience higher rates of depression and anxiety during puberty. The emotional world grows louder and more intense, and the chemical systems that are supposed to soothe may sometimes fall out of rhythm. Boys, fueled by testosterone and dopamine, may become more reactive, more impulsive, more inclined toward externalizing their emotions rather than turning inward. Their world becomes one of challenges, boundaries, and asserting identity. In both, the question burns quietly underneath. Who am I? And for the first time, who are they? Who is the other? The one I want to impress, to be seen by, to hold, to be held by. What do they want? What do I offer? Am I enough? These questions are not asked out loud, but they ripple through every teenage text message, every awkward flirtation, every heart-pounding moment of closeness. And here's the wonder and the danger. The answers that come during this time often stick, because the adolescent brain is primed for emotional memory. The experiences we have in our teenage years are stored deeply. They become templates. They become stories we tell ourselves about love, desire, worth, and vulnerability. If you are loved gently during this time, that becomes a kind of inner home. If you were dismissed, shamed, or betrayed, that too becomes a blueprint, sometimes repeated over and over in adult relationships. This is how biology becomes biography. And still, the story is not over. Because puberty doesn't just create new feelings, it creates a new version of the self. And that self wants connection, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually. This is the root of romantic yearning. It's not just about bodies. It's about resonance. It's about being known. To touch someone and be touched is a physical act. But to be felt by someone, deeply understood, seen, cherished, that is emotional intimacy. And puberty is the first time we start to crave that depth. Often before we're ready to receive it. Often before we understand what it really means. And here's the question that emerges. Could the emotional differences between men and women be partially written by biology before choice ever enters the equation? It's not an easy question. It's not politically comfortable. But it is worth exploring. Because if oxytocin and estrogen prime the brain for connection, and if testosterone and dopamine prime it for challenge and novelty, then maybe we can better understand the tension so many couples feel. The longing for closeness, the fear of being engulfed, the misreading of signals, the pushing and pulling that becomes a dance of misunderstanding. It's not personal, it's patterned. But this isn't about stereotypes. It's about tendencies. It's about knowing what ingredients are in the mix, so we can cook with awareness instead of confusion. The truth is, we are more than our hormones. We are more than our childhoods. We are more than our first crushes and broken hearts. But those things shape us. They leave fingerprints on our emotional wiring. And when we ignore them, we become confused by our own reactions. So now, breathe. Take a moment to think about your own passage through puberty. What did you feel? Who made you feel seen? Who made you feel small? What stories did you start to believe about love, about bodies, about emotions? You don't need to analyze. Just notice. Let the memories float like leaves across the surface of a quiet pond. This is not about blame. It's about curiosity. It's about reclaiming awareness. Because once we see where the wiring began, we can begin to rewire. And yet, beyond biology, something else begins to form during this period. Something invisible. Something more than chemical surges or developmental milestones. Something that will guide our adult relationships more than testosterone or oxytocin ever could. That something is emotional connectedness, the ability to feel another person's emotional state and to allow them to feel ours. It is the quiet language beneath words, the sacred meeting place where two nervous systems hum in harmony. This, more than anything, is what makes relationships safe. And this, more than anything, is what most of us hunger for, even if we don't have the words to say it. So now, take one final breath. You've walked through the forests of change. You've remembered the rawness of early desire. You've seen how the first blueprints of love were written not by choice, but by chemistry, biology, and time. But now, let's move even deeper. Let's explore the space between two people. The bridge, the resonance, the pulse of connection that exists even in silence. Let's step softly into the next chapter. Emotional connectedness, not just as a feeling, but as a way of being. You're ready. Take a slow breath. Let your jaw relax. Let your shoulders drop. Soften into stillness. You're here, and for now, that is more than enough. We live in a world of interruptions. Notifications flicker across our screens. Tasks stack themselves like restless waves. Timelines pull us forward before we even know where we are going. We are connected in 1,000 visible ways. Our devices buzzing with life. But underneath it all, something quiet is missing. That something is emotional connectedness. Not just presence, not just communication, but resonance. The soft unseen tuning between one person and another. A mutual frequency of feeling. A shared emotional space where nervous systems recognize each other, even before words are spoken. This is what the body craves. This is what the soul remembers. And this is what many of us are quietly starving for, even as we scroll, speak, and keep busy. It is a paradox of our time. Never have we been more linked, and never have we felt so alone. But this isn't a failing of willpower. It's not about being weak or overly sensitive. It's biological. Emotional connectedness is wired into the structure of your brain. It is a need, like food or sleep or air. When we are emotionally attuned to another human being, specific regions of the brain come alive. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which governs emotional understanding and regulation. The anterior cingulate cortex, which tracks social pain and reward. The insula, which helps us feel empathy. And perhaps most beautifully, the vagus nerve, a vast meandering nerve that links the brain to the heart, lungs, and gut, calms itself when we are in the presence of someone emotionally safe. In other words, emotional connection regulates the body. It slows our breathing. It steadies our heart rate. It lowers stress hormones like cortisol. It increases oxytocin, making us feel warm and bonded and okay. And this perhaps is the most radical idea of all. You do not have to be alone to feel lonely. Loneliness is not about proximity. It is about attunement. You can be surrounded by people, friends, co-workers, even romantic partners, and still feel emotionally starved. If no one truly sees you, if no one reflects back your inner world, if no one offers the quiet gift of presence, the nervous system continues to operate in a state of subtle threat. There is no resonance, no deep safety, only the performance of closeness, and the body knows the difference. From the time we are born, we search for that safety. As infants, we cry, not just for food or warmth, but for presence. And when a caregiver picks us up, gazes into our eyes, mirrors our coos and expressions, that is emotional connectedness. That is where trust is born, not in words, but in nervous systems meeting. This is called limbic regulation, one emotional brain soothing another. And even as adults, we never outgrow this need. We simply get better at hiding it. We hide it behind long hours, behind perfectly curated online lives, behind humor, behind ambition, behind cynicism, behind independence. But inside, a quieter voice says, please see me, please feel me, please be with me. You've heard this voice before, in yourself, and perhaps in others. In the way someone lingers after a conversation ends, hoping you'll ask how they're really doing. In the way you feel a strange ache after spending hours with people who never truly looked into your eyes. In the way silence feels heavier when it comes from someone you love. These moments matter, not because they are dramatic, but because they speak to the depth of our emotional design. Connection is not about how often we interact. It is about how deeply we feel with one another. Studies have shown that people with a few emotionally rich relationships tend to experience less stress, fewer health issues, and greater life satisfaction than people with many shallow connections. It is not the number of faces in the room. It is the presence of attuned faces that makes the difference. And yet, we often find ourselves surrounded by noise instead. Noise in our schedules, noise in our minds, noise in our devices. We've traded depth for speed, intimacy for efficiency, and in doing so, something vital has gone quiet. So what is emotional connectedness really? It is the moment someone asks how you're doing and waits with softness for the full truth. It is the way a partner reaches for your hand without words. It is the glance across the table that says, I know what you're feeling. I'm here. It is not always dramatic or poetic. Sometimes it's as simple as someone remembering the small details, or sitting with you in silence, or offering presence when there are no solutions. It is not about fixing. It is about feeling with. And this is the key. Emotional connectedness requires availability. Not just physically, but emotionally. It requires that we be open, receptive, and grounded enough to witness another without immediately turning the spotlight back to ourselves. And that is difficult in a distracted world. Many people want connection. Fewer are willing to slow down enough to create it. We rush. We multitask. We check our phones mid-conversation. We offer advice instead of empathy. We fear silence, so we feel it. But connection lives in the stillness between words, in the pause before response, in the courage to be quiet long enough to feel what someone else is feeling. So now breathe again. Think of a time you felt truly seen, not admired, not agreed with, but felt. Maybe it was brief, maybe it was years ago, but your body remembers. Notice what that memory does to your breath, your chest, your heart. That is what connection feels like. It is rare, but it is possible. And it is one of the most healing experiences a person can have. And here's the truth. For all our technologies, for all our cleverness and innovation and speed, we still long for it. Deep down, beneath the performance of being fine, the need for emotional resonance still pulses like a drum beat. So why, in this hyper-connected age, do so many still feel alone? Because presence without attunement is like food without flavor. It fills the time, but not the soul. We have built lives full of doing, but our biology is built for being with. We text instead of call. We like instead of ask. We check in digitally, but rarely pause long enough to really listen. We fear vulnerability. We fear being a burden. We fear being misunderstood. And so, we withdraw. We protect ourselves from disappointment by avoiding depth. And in doing so, we become more isolated than ever. But here's the hope. Connection can be rebuilt. One conversation at a time. One shared breath. One moment of being fully present with another human being. It doesn't require therapy or grand declarations. Sometimes it's as simple as this. Tell me how you're really feeling. I'm not in a rush. Those words are medicine, and the body knows it. The body knows when it is safe to exhale. The body knows when it is being received. The body knows when someone is with us, not just in the room, but in the moment. And when we experience this, something shifts. We become more regulated, more grounded, more human. Because ultimately, connection brings us home. Home to ourselves, home to others, home to something ancient in our biology that whispers, "You don't have to carry this alone." So now pause. Let your breath become steady again. Let your mind settle into this idea. Maybe the solution to loneliness isn't more contact. Maybe it's more presence. Maybe the answer isn't more words. Maybe it's more silence, more space for others to unfold. Maybe what we need isn't to be surrounded, but to be felt. And maybe, just maybe, that starts with how we show up, with one another, and with ourselves. Let this moment be a rehearsal. Let this silence between thoughts be a kind of connection. Let your nervous system feel, even briefly, what safety feels like. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not alone in your hunger for depth, and this journey you're on, the slow unfolding of understanding, is sacred. It is a return to the body, a return to the places where chemistry meets consciousness, where emotion becomes sensation, where the invisible becomes known. So now, as we close this chapter, prepare to pull back into the body, into the quiet rhythms that shape how we feel, how we react, and how we come alive in the presence of others. You've explored the shape of connection. Next, we explore the substance of it. Let's return to the source, where feelings begin, the meeting place of biology, emotion, and awareness. Let's go gently into the next chapter, where chemistry meets consciousness. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your breath fall into its own rhythm. There's no rush. Let your body soften into the quiet. Let your mind slow its pace, like a river winding down for the evening. You've followed this path far, from identity to bonding to attachment to the moment of connection. And now we arrive at a simple, startling question. What are feelings really? We speak of them as if they are intangible, fleeting, mystical. We describe them with poetry. We paint them with metaphors. We say our hearts are broken, our stomachs are knotted, our souls are stirred. But behind the poetry, behind the pulse of emotion, is something deeply biological. What if emotions are not just mysterious waves crashing through consciousness, but biochemical events? What if they are rooted not just in the heart, but in hormones, not just in stories, but in synapses? What if a thought becomes a molecule? What if that molecule becomes a mood? Let's begin at the molecular level, where emotion begins not as a word, not as a sensation, but as a signal. Inside your body, there is an orchestra of chemical messengers, hormones and neurotransmitters, each with its own personality, its own rhythm. These messengers shape the entire texture of your emotional world. Cortisol, for instance, is the hormone of stress. It rises when your brain perceives a threat. It sharpens your senses. It increases your alertness. It prepares you to survive. But when cortisol stays elevated for too long, when the threat doesn't pass, your system begins to fray. You become irritable, anxious, exhausted, not because you are weak, but because your chemistry is on high alert. Then there is adrenaline, the rush of urgency. It's the feeling of your heart pounding in your chest when something startles you. It pushes blood into your muscles. It pulls you into the now. But too much adrenaline, too often, and the body begins to ache. It begins to wear thin. On the other end of the emotional spectrum lives serotonin, often associated with mood stability and contentment. It doesn't create euphoria. It creates steadiness, ground, an inner sense of okayness. When serotonin is low, we may feel sadness, even despair. We lose our appetite for food, for connection, for life itself. Then dopamine, the spark, the reward chemical. It fires when we pursue something we want. A goal, a compliment, a text message from someone we miss. It's not just about pleasure. It's about anticipation of pleasure. It's motivation, curiosity, drive. It pulls us toward things. And like a drug, it fades quickly, requiring more to keep us going. And finally, oxytocin, the molecule of closeness. It flows through us when we feel safe with someone, when we are touched gently, when we are held, when we cry, and someone stays. It is the hormonal fingerprint of love and trust. Each of these chemicals, invisible to the naked eye, create the very sensations we label as emotion. You feel what you feel because your body is whispering to you in molecules. A thought arises. It might be subtle. Will they call me back? Or powerful. I'm not safe. Or warm. I love them. That thought becomes an electrical signal in the brain. That signal activates a cascade, a waterfall of biochemical reactions. Neurons fire. Hormones are released. Neurotransmitters surge. Your heart rate changes. Your stomach tightens. Your muscles prepare. And suddenly you're feeling. You're in the feeling. You're anxious. You're elated. You're falling in love. You're sinking into grief. From a thought to a chemical to a state of being. And here is where the wonder blooms. These feelings, though triggered by molecules, feel profoundly personal. They shape our memories, our decisions, our identities. We say, I am heartbroken, not my oxytocin levels dropped. We say, I am in love, not my dopamine system is firing at a higher frequency. We do not experience the chemistry. We experience the story the chemistry tells. But here is a deeper question. Are you feeling love or chemically reacting to it? And if we answer both, what does that mean? It means that love is not less real because it lives in the bloodstream. It means that your soul might be soluble in blood, that your deepest experiences are not floating above the body, but woven through it, that the spiritual and the physical are not separate, that your longing for connection is not a poetic flaw, but a physiological truth. So breathe again, gently. Let this settle. Your emotions are not just feelings. They are biological events, shaped by your environment, your history, your thoughts, and even your gut. Yes, your gut. The enteric nervous system, often called the second brain, houses over 100 million neurons. It speaks directly to your emotional brain via the vagus nerve. The state of your digestive tract, your microbiome, your inflammation levels can influence your mood, depression, anxiety, even emotional clarity. These are not just mental experiences. They are full body conversations. We are chemical beings, but that does not make us mechanical. It makes us intricate. You are not a machine reacting to input. You are an organism responding to your inner and outer world in complex, poetic, and mysterious ways. Your tears are not weakness. They are chemical regulation, a release of built-up stress, a recalibration of emotional overload. Your moods are not random. They are weather patterns in your hormonal sky. And your thoughts, oh, your thoughts, they are like seeds dropped into a garden of biology. Some grow, some wither, but all have the power to shift your chemistry and therefore your emotional reality. And yet, in all this complexity, one truth remains simple. Your body is always trying to take care of you. Your emotions, even the painful ones, are data, messages, signals that something inside needs attention, regulation, care. Even anger is a call for boundaries. Even anxiety is a call for safety. Even sadness is a call for slowing down. And every feeling, whether rooted in trauma or joy, is carried on the wind of your biochemistry. So now, let's reflect deeper. If feelings are chemical, are we just responding to reactions? Are we free? Are we choosing love? Or are we being driven by it? There is no easy answer. But maybe the question is not whether our emotions are real or chemical. Maybe the deeper insight is that the realness comes through the chemical. That biology is the language of experience, and perhaps that language, in its vast and ancient beauty, was written by something greater. A design that allows love to flood through oxytocin, that allows purpose to emerge through dopamine, that allows grief to etch itself into cortisol, and somehow bring meaning with it. What does it mean if the soul is not separate from the body, but entirely expressed through it? It means that your humanity is holy, that your tears are sacred, that your body's reactions are not flaws. They are evidence that you are alive, alert, attuned. And it means that healing is not just spiritual, it's chemical. That sleep, food, connection, touch, these are all medicines. It also means that your chemistry can be changed, not by force, not by willpower, but by safety, by presence, by time. A safe conversation can lower your cortisol. A warm hug can raise your oxytocin. A quiet walk in nature can rebalance your serotonin. There is hope in that, because it means you are never stuck, never broken, just in process. And so, as we close this chapter, breathe one more time. Feel the air fill your lungs. That too shifts your chemistry. Know this: your emotions are not mysteries to be solved. They are messages to be heard. And when you listen with gentleness, with curiosity, with reverence, you begin to return to yourself, not as a fixed identity, but as a living symphony of signals, sensations, and sacred storms. And though these chemical storms eventually pass, they leave something behind. Not just understanding, not just change, but memory. Because every feeling once felt leaves a trace, not just in thought, but in the brain, in the body, in the emotional archive of who you are becoming. So now, let's go there. Let's wander into the archive. Let's explore how emotions are stored, how they linger, how they rise again, years later, in a scent, in a song, in a stranger's smile. Let's move now into emotional memory, where every trace becomes a story, and every story shapes the soul. Let your breath soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest, palms open, receptive. You are entering a quieter part of the path now. A place where time folds, where the past lives in the present, and where echoes become emotion. Have you ever heard a song and suddenly remembered a person? Not just their face, but the way they made you feel, or smelled something. A cologne, a kitchen, a season, and been transported to a moment that felt more like presence than memory. This is not nostalgia. It's not imagination. It's not just remembering. It is emotional memory. And it lives not in the mind alone, but in the body, in the wiring of the brain, in the muscle of the heart. Some people stay with us long after they've left. Their words, their touch, the way they laughed. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it aches. And often, it's both. Why does this happen? To understand, we must enter the realm of the brain. Specifically, two small but powerful structures nestled deep within it: the amygdala and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is like a librarian. It catalogs our memories. What happened, when it happened, Who was there? It builds the mental timeline of our lives. The amygdala, on the other hand, is a gatekeeper of emotion. It scans the world for danger, but it also attaches emotional weight to experiences. It doesn't just record that something happened, it records how it felt. Together, these two structures create a map of memory. But this map isn't organized by facts, it's organized by intensity. That means the more emotionally charged a moment is, the more deeply it is encoded. Your brain and body make sure you won't forget, not just to preserve the memory, but to shape future behavior. The brain is not a historian, it's a prediction machine. It remembers emotionally charged moments to guide how you respond in the future. But here's where things get more human and more mysterious. Emotional memory doesn't always ask for permission. It doesn't knock gently on the door of consciousness. It doesn't wait until you're ready to revisit something. It rises, suddenly, subtly, through the back door of sensation, through a chill on your skin, through a pang in your chest, through a word that reminds you of someone, somewhere, once. You don't have to think about them for them to live inside you. This is how imprinting happens. When someone touches your life during a time of heightened emotion, whether joy, grief, love, betrayal, intimacy, or fear, their presence can become etched into your neurobiology. Your brain doesn't just record what they did or said, it associates them with a specific emotional state. And when you feel that emotion again, their memory stirs. This is why people can haunt us. Why years after a relationship ends, we can still feel the invisible pull of their voice, their name, the way they used to breathe next to us. It's not because we're obsessed. It's because they've become part of the internal landscape, part of your emotional memory. We are not blank slates. We are palimpsests, pages written on, erased, written again, traces always left behind. And it isn't just romantic partners. It can be a parent who once soothed or frightened us, a teacher who believed in us, a friend who once held our secrets. Anyone whose presence held emotional charge becomes part of the neural fabric. And once imprinted, these figures can influence how we relate to others. We may find ourselves seeking the comfort they once gave us, or repeating the pain they caused. We may unconsciously choose partners who resemble them, or avoid people who trigger similar feelings. These imprints become blueprints, patterns of love and fear, trust and vigilance, closeness and avoidance. And here's the unsettling truth. Much of this happens without our awareness. We might think we're making fresh choices, but often we're following old emotional maps. We are not just choosing people, we are choosing familiar feelings. And sometimes what's familiar isn't what's good for us. So now breathe. Let your nervous system settle as you consider this. Is there someone who still lives inside you? Someone whose presence shaped your wiring? Someone whose absence still hums in your chest? There's no need to analyze. Just notice. This isn't about judgment. It's about understanding. Because emotional memory is not something we outgrow. It is something we integrate. And this leads to a deeper question. Are we ever truly single if we carry others inside us? We often speak of being alone as a relationship status. But what if we're never really alone? What if every connection we've ever made still speaks through us? Through our reactions, our fears, our longings? What if we are always accompanied by past selves, past others, and the emotional residue they left behind? This isn't a burden, it's a truth, and it can be freeing, because once we acknowledge that the past lives in the present, we can begin to move through it with gentleness. We can start to ask new questions. What parts of me were shaped by someone else's love? What parts of me were shaped by their absence? What am I still carrying that no longer needs to be carried? Pause here. Let your breath stay soft. Emotional memory is not a prison. It is a library, a place where stories are stored, some dusty, some glowing. You can walk through its shelves. You can open old chapters. You can even write new endings. You do not have to be ruled by the people who live inside you, but you can honor them. You can honor the ones who hurt you by choosing not to repeat their story. You can honor the ones who loved you by letting their kindness shape how you treat others. And you can honor yourself by remembering that every imprint means you felt something, and to feel is to be alive. So now let's step back and look again. What does it mean to be imprinted by someone? It means your brain, in a moment of vulnerability, said, "This matters. Remember this. Learn from this. Protect against this. Return to this." It was your brain's way of anchoring you to meaning. And yet sometimes the brain anchors us too tightly. We become trapped in loops. We feel drawn to people who hurt us. We compare new partners to old ghosts. We sabotage good things because they feel unfamiliar. We mistrust love because it reminds us of loss. And so we ask, is this memory or is this addiction? Because the line between emotional imprint and chemical attachment can be paper thin, which leads to the next chapter. If a person can live inside us, not just emotionally but chemically, if we return to them, not because of who they are now, but because of how they once made us feel, then we must ask, can we become chemically addicted to people? Not just because we miss them, but because our brain craves the emotional signature they left behind. This is not a poetic question. It is a biological one, and it's the one we will explore next. But before we go, rest here a moment longer. Let the people in your memory rise, not to judge them, not to dwell, but to gently acknowledge the truth. They mattered. They changed something in you. And their echoes, soft, subtle, or sharp, have shaped the way you love. But they do not own your story. You can thank them. You can release them. You can rewrite the script. And you can remember. You are allowed to be full of old echoes and still open to new songs. Now take a final breath. Let it steady you. And prepare to move into the next room of this journey, where chemistry and memory collide, where love becomes longing, where addiction to a person might not be a metaphor. Let's go, gently. Take a breath. Let it move gently into your body. Let it slow everything down. There's no rush here. No need to arrive anywhere quickly. We're entering tender territory. Not dramatic, but deep. Not loud, but quietly disorienting. Let's begin with a single simple question. What if love, especially toxic love, isn't emotional at all, but an addiction? It's a provocative idea, one that doesn't fit into the soft pastel stories we tell about romance, about destiny, about soulmates. But sometimes love doesn't feel gentle. Sometimes it feels obsessive, uncontrollable. Sometimes it hurts more than it heals. And yet, we return to it over and over again, not because it's good, but because something in our body won't let it go. This isn't weakness. This is chemistry. The human brain is wired for attachment. It is also wired for reward. And when the two systems collide, when love becomes tied to uncertainty, inconsistency, or emotional highs and lows, the result can feel less like connection and more like compulsion. The science behind this is quiet, but powerful. At the center of this cycle are two key players, dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, fires not when we receive a reward, but when we expect one. It creates a feeling of excitement, desire, pursuit. It's what motivates us to keep checking our phones, waiting for a message. What keeps us hooked on the maybe. Maybe they'll text. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they'll come back. But dopamine doesn't care whether the thing is good for us. It only knows that we want it. Then there's oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It flows when we hug, when we kiss, when we cry in someone's arms. It creates trust. It reinforces closeness. It makes the other person feel like home, even if that home is full of chaos. When these chemicals are released in cycles of intermittent reinforcement, sometimes we feel loved, other times abandoned. The brain enters a loop that feels a lot like addiction. Not metaphorically, literally. Brain scans of people in the throes of romantic rejection show activation in the same brain regions associated with cocaine withdrawal. The cravings, the obsessive thoughts, the emotional crashes, the inability to focus, the physical ache, the loss of appetite, the inability to sleep, the desperate bargaining. These are not simply symptoms of a broken heart. They are withdrawal. And the more inconsistent the relationship was, the more unpredictable the love, the stronger the addiction tends to be. Because unpredictability enhances dopamine release. If the connection was calm, stable, consistent, the brain relaxes. But if the connection is hot and cold, push and pull, then the brain stays on high alert. The reward becomes rare. And rare rewards are more powerfully reinforcing than constant ones. That means the more someone pulls away, the more our body craves their return. It's a paradox, a chemical trap. And it's why we can feel addicted to people who hurt us, why we go back when we know better, why we confuse longing with love. It's also why we feel like we're going to die when they leave, because in some ways, part of the body believes it will. So now, take another breath. Let this truth land softly. There is nothing wrong with you. If you found yourself entangled in someone you knew wasn't good for you, it's not because you were foolish. It's not because you're broken. It's not because you didn't try hard enough. It may be because your brain was reacting exactly as it was designed to. Reacting to chemical loops, to hormonal tides, to neurological circuitry. This understanding is not an excuse, but it is a doorway to grace. Because once we understand the addictive nature of toxic connection, we can begin to imagine a path to detox. But that path is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, because like any addiction, healing from a person takes withdrawal. That means allowing the body to feel what it's afraid to feel, to ride the waves of grief, longing, discomfort, and loneliness without reaching for the old drug, the text, the memory, the fix. It means creating space, not just physical, but emotional. It means retraining the nervous system to find safety in stillness, to find regulation in something other than their voice. And it means asking, what need was this person meeting that I haven't yet learned to meet within myself? Because at the heart of addiction is not pleasure. It is pain, a need unmet, a wound unhealed, a part of us that doesn't know how to soothe itself. So maybe we weren't addicted to the person themselves. Maybe we were addicted to how we felt with them. Maybe we were addicted to the moments we felt seen, or the temporary silence of our own inner doubt, or the illusion that we were finally enough. And when they left, or changed, or turned cold, that illusion shattered, and the craving returned. This is where heartbreak becomes more than sorrow. It becomes withdrawal. And this is why time doesn't always heal on its own. Because if we don't change the wiring, we repeat the cycle. We find someone else who gives us the same chemical thrill, the same unpredictable warmth, the same high-end crash. And we call it fate. We call it passion. We call it love. But really it's a loop, a familiar hit of dopamine, a shot of oxytocin, a moment of relief before the ache returns. So now, pause. Let yourself reflect gently. Has there been someone in your life who felt like a high? Someone who made your heart race? your world spin, your sense of self disappear? Did you feel calm with them? Or addicted to the moments when they gave you attention? Did you feel safe? Or just temporarily soothed? Again, no judgment, only noticing. This is about awareness, and awareness is the beginning of freedom. Because yes, we can detox from people, but it requires more than distance. It requires repatterning. That means surrounding ourselves with relationships that are boring to our trauma, but safe to our nervous system. That means choosing steadiness over sparks, consistency over chaos. That means learning to recognize peace as love, instead of mistaking it for emptiness. And it means teaching our bodies a new truth. Love doesn't have to hurt to feel real. Connection doesn't have to be addictive to be deep. Presence doesn't have to be dramatic to be profound. This is hard work, quiet work, often invisible, but slowly, the cravings lessen, the memory fades, the old chemical loops loosen, and the space where that person once lived begins to fill with you. Which leads us to the next truth. If we can become addicted to people, if we can crave them like a substance, then what happens to the self in the process? Where do we go when the other becomes our focus? Do we lose our center? Do we dissolve? This is the next step on the path, the dissolution of identity. How connection, in its most intense forms, can blur the boundary between self and other. How we merge, how we disappear, and maybe how we find ourselves again. But before we move forward, pause here a moment longer. Breathe into your body. Let the cravings, the memories, the echoes soften. You are not alone in this. You are not broken. You are simply becoming aware of what was already true. And awareness, quiet as it seems, is a kind of revolution. Now, when you're ready, we'll walk into the next chapter. A place where identity bends, where boundaries blur, where we explore what happens when we give so much of ourselves that we forget who we are. Let's begin again. In Chapter 9, the dissolution of self in relationships. We're almost there. Keep breathing. You're doing beautifully. Take a breath. Not a deep one, just enough. Enough to remember that you are still here, still in this body, still in this quiet unfolding. Tonight, we move into a tender space, a place where identity softens and sometimes disappears, where connection becomes so deep, so consuming, that we begin to ask, when do I stop being me? We often romanticize this idea of merging, becoming one, finishing each other's sentences, breathing the same air, living inside each other's hearts. We call it intimacy. We call it love. We call it forever. But under the sweetness, there's a question few of us dare to name. Is merging with another the ultimate intimacy, or a quiet erasure? This is not an accusation. It is an invitation to reflect. Because the truth is, no one comes through love unchanged. We absorb, we echo, we mirror, we adapt. It starts subtly. We begin to use their phrases. We take on their rhythms, their opinions, their moods. We lose ourselves in their world, and it feels good. It feels natural. It feels like belonging. But somewhere along the way, the line between where we end and they begins to blur. This is not just a poetic idea. It is deeply rooted in how the human brain works. Within us are mirror neurons, specialized cells that allow us to reflect the actions, emotions, and intentions of others. They are the neurological basis of empathy, the reason why we wince when someone else stubs their toe, why we cry at movies, why we instinctively smile back when someone smiles at us. But mirror neurons do more than help us relate. They help us become. When we spend time with someone, especially someone we love, our nervous systems begin to sync. Our heart rates, breathing patterns, even our brainwaves start to align. Over time, we may begin to internalize their emotional states as our own. Their calm becomes our calm. Their distress becomes our storm. This is beautiful. This is bonding. This is what it means to be human. And it's also what makes love so dangerous. Because in that sinking, in that merging, we can begin to lose our own center. We become enmeshed, not just emotionally, but psychologically. We begin to define ourselves by the relationship. Our identity becomes a reflection of their gaze, their needs, their moods. We stop asking, what do I feel? And start asking, what do they need me to feel? This is called enmeshment, a psychological term for the blurring of boundaries, where one person's emotional reality dominates the shared space. It happens slowly, it happens quietly, and it often feels like love. But enmeshment is not intimacy, it is fusion. And fusion, while initially euphoric, comes at a cost, because in losing our separateness, we risk losing our sovereignty. We forget how to soothe ourselves without their presence. We forget how to make decisions without their approval. We forget what it felt like to be ourselves before them. And when the relationship begins to wobble or fade or end, we don't just grieve the person, we grieve the part of ourselves that only existed in their presence. And so we ache, not just from loss, but from disorientation. Who am I without them? Who was I before them? Was there ever a me? Or have I always just been a reflection? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awakening. Because here is something most of us were never taught. We are shaped by every love we touch. Who you think you are may be, at least in part, a collection of borrowed traits. The laughter of your best friend, the courage of a parent, the stillness of a mentor, the rawness of a partner who cracked you open. You have absorbed them, integrated them, made them yours. Not because you're empty, but because you are. Beautifully, porous. This is not failure. This is not codependency. This is nature. We are meant to shape one another. We are designed to merge and unmerge, to blend and to return. The key is in the return, because love is not meant to consume. It is meant to expand. Real intimacy doesn't erase the self. It illuminates it. It says, I see you, and I want you to be more of who you are, not less. It says, I will hold space for your separate world, even as we build something shared. But sometimes, we meet people who don't know how to hold that kind of space, or we ourselves don't know how to remain whole within love's gravity, and so we fold, we shrink, we shapeshift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. We stop expressing needs. We stop voicing doubts. We stop dreaming alone. We become someone smaller, someone safer. And sometimes we don't notice it's happened until it's too late, until we're standing in front of the mirror, months or years later, wondering, where did I go? But here's the quiet miracle. The self is never truly gone. It is waiting, beneath the layers, beneath the adaptation, beneath the borrowed behaviors. It remembers, and it returns, the moment we invite it back. Sometimes that invitation comes through solitude, sometimes through new love, sometimes through heartbreak, but always, it comes through awareness. So pause here, let yourself ask, without fear. In my deepest relationships, did I expand or contract? Did I express or edit? Did I find myself or forget myself? Let the answers rise slowly. There's no need to fix anything yet. Just notice, because noticing is the first act of reclaiming. And reclaiming the self doesn't mean rejecting the other. It means drawing a boundary where you begin and where they end. It means building a bridge between two wholenesses, not fusing into one fog. And sometimes we fall in love before we know who we are. And so we become the person the other wants us to be, not out of manipulation, but out of longing, out of a hope that if we become lovable enough, we will be loved completely. But the love we win through erasure will always feel fragile, because deep down, we know the truth. They don't love the real me. They love the version I've performed. And so we live in fear of being found out, or we live in exhaustion from holding the performance, or we forget, slowly, what we even wanted to be in the first place. But hear this now, gently. You are allowed to exist as you are, without shrinking, without adapting, without merging into someone else's image of who you should be. Love at its highest is not the loss of self. It is the sacred meeting of selves, the dance of two complete people, choosing, again and again, to meet in the middle, to mirror, yes, but also to maintain, to blend, yes, but also to return, to change, yes, but only in ways that honor the core. So now breathe again. Let this breath belong fully to you, not to the version of you someone once needed, not to the role you once played to stay safe, to you, as you are in this moment. If you have lost yourself in love before, you are not alone. If you are only now beginning to notice how far you wandered, you are not late. This is the journey of all of us, to dissolve and to reassemble, to fall into someone, and then find our way back, to know that losing the self is not the end of the story. It can be the beginning of remembering. Because even when the mirror is shattered, the reflection can still be found. And as we prepare to close this chapter, let the idea settle. You are allowed to be whole, even in love, especially in love. Now, we've traveled far together, from identity to bonding, to attachment, to memory, to addiction, to dissolution. And as we near the end, it's time to step back, to pull the camera lens far, far out, to move from the personal into the cosmic. Because if we are not only who we think we are, then who are we really? Not just as individuals, but as a collective, as a species, as a soul family, as something vast and shared and ancient. Let's go there next, into the final chapter. Who are we? A collective identity. Let the question arrive. Let the heart stay open. We're almost home. Let your breath be your guide. Inhale softly. Exhale gently. Let the quiet return to you like a tide. We've journeyed inward, through the mind, the body, the bonds we form, the losses we grieve, the emotions we carry, the people we remember, the selves we become. Now, at the edge of this path, we widen our view. We zoom out, not just from the self, but from the species, from the soul, from the shape of what it means to be human. So now we ask, who are we? Not just me, not just you, but we. Who are we together? What are we really? A species? A social experiment? A beautiful accident of biology? Or something more? When we stop looking at ourselves as individuals walking side by side and start seeing ourselves as interconnected threads in the same woven cloth, a strange, shimmering truth begins to emerge. Maybe we are not many. Maybe we are one. One consciousness, fractured into billions of bodies, each trying to remember the same thing, that we belong to one another. Some scientists believe this is more than a metaphor. They speak of emergent behavior, the idea that consciousness isn't confined to the skull, but arises from interaction. That identity isn't a fixed node, but a flowing field, that the mind may not be in the brain, but between us, an invisible web formed by language, resonance, energy. In this view, you are not a sealed unit. You are an open system. You receive and respond. You send out signals and absorb others. You influence and are influenced. You are part of something bigger, something dynamic and alive. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a shared psychic inheritance, passed not only through culture, but through something deeper, a timeless well of symbols, instincts, myths. We dream similar dreams because we are built from the same blueprint. We fear the same things. We yearn in the same patterns. We are haunted by the same archetypes. Even if we never meet, we carry the same inner language. And then there's the spiritual view, found in Christianity, in particular, where we are not just a species, but a body, one body, many members, different roles, but the same life coursing through. The Apostle Paul writes that we are one body in Christ and individually members one of another. In this view, unity is not optional. It is the truth beneath the illusion of separation. Christ is not just a figure, but a center, a unifying heartbeat, the mind to which we are connected. In this body, no one is replaceable. No part is disposable. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. The strong uplift the weak. The rejoicing are joined by the mourning. The hand moves, and the entire body feels it. What if that is more than scripture? What if that is reality? What if, beneath race and region, beneath creed and category, we are fragments of the same awareness? Each person a window, each soul a shadow of a larger mirror, each heart a pulse in the same invisible rhythm. Maybe this is why grief is so heavy. Because when we lose someone, we don't just lose a person. We lose a part of the collective self. A window closes. A frequency disappears from the field. And our nervous systems, wired for connection, mourn not just the absence, but the silence. And maybe this is why love is so healing. Because when we love, we are drawn back toward wholeness, not toward possession or fusion, but toward recognition. Something in the other person says, I see you, and something in us replies, I've known you forever, even if we've only just met. And what is that knowing? It cannot be measured, but it can be felt. Maybe it is the memory of oneness. Maybe it is the ache of having been split apart, souls scattered like stars, and the yearning to remember that we were never meant to remain separate. Think of this. When babies are born, they cannot distinguish themselves from the world. They do not know where their skin ends and the blanket begins. They feel the mother's heartbeat as their own. Separation is a learned concept. The I is not a given. It is constructed. And so, perhaps the longing we feel throughout life for intimacy, for purpose, for home, is not just emotional. It is ancestral, a biological, spiritual ache to return to the unity we once knew, before language, before division, before ego. What if we are all just remembering? What if, behind every conversation, every relationship, every conflict and kiss, every act of creation, we are trying to come back together? What if the people who draw us in most intensely are simply those whose frequency matches our own, like notes in the same chord? And what if love is not something we generate, but something we recognize, something already present, waiting to be uncovered? This would explain so much. It would explain why we cry when a stranger sings something beautiful, why we feel safe in someone's presence for no logical reason, why we dream of people we've never met, why we can feel another's pain in our own body. We are not separate. We are expressions of the same source. And yet, we forget. We forget because we must. To be human is to forget for a while the wholeness, to take on a name, a story, a body, to suffer and wonder and search. But sometimes in moments of deep connection or stillness, we remember again. We glimpse it, we feel it, and it brings us to our knees. You felt this before, in the way a sunset stilled your thoughts, in the way a friend's laughter opened your chest, in the way a loss hollowed you and somehow made room for more tenderness. You remembered, even for a breath, that you are not alone, and that truth lives beneath everything. So now, breathe, not just for yourself. Breathe for the whole body of us, the collective, the many that are one. Let your breath be a bridge. Let your breath be a hymn. Perhaps you are not your name, not your pain, not your past. Perhaps you are an echo of something timeless, of something whole. Perhaps you are a song sung by a larger voice, forgotten by the singer, but still vibrating in the air. And what if every act of kindness, every quiet moment, every breath of forgiveness brings us closer to hearing that song again? We do not have to agree on what the song is called. Some will call it God, some will call it love, some will call it consciousness, or unity, or Christ, or the field, or source. The names don't matter. What matters is that we feel it, that we live as though it's real, that we remember, however briefly, that beneath our costumes of identity, we are made of the same stuff, the same longing, the same light, the same awareness, learning to see itself. So now, we've reached the end. And yet, not the end at all, because this journey is circular. Each question leads to another. Each insight becomes a doorway, and each moment of stillness is a beginning. So let the final question linger. Who are we? Not in theory, not in belief, but in feeling. Let your body answer. Let your breath answer. Let your stillness answer. And as the night deepens, let yourself drift, if you wish. Sleep, if your body asks for it. Or stay with the question a little longer. Let it echo in your chest. Let it ring softly in your soul. And as you close your eyes, feel this. Perhaps deep down, we are all just echoes of the same voice, trying to find our way back to one another. You are part of that voice, and you are not alone. Not now, not ever.